From atheism to astrophysics, from evolution to economics, from comparative religion to cults, from philosophy to politics, a voice of reason in our confused world and beacon of truth and hope in this age of uncertainty. Welcome to God and Science Foundation with physician, teacher, and evangelist Dr. Paul Koukl. God and Science Foundation is designed to study the relationship between God and science and to defend Christian faith from a scientific perspective. Dr. Paul's teaching helps you understand the vital issues affecting our world from a biblical worldview. For today's lecture, here is Dr. Paul.
Welcome back to Defender's Voice. This is Dr. Paul Koukl. Thank you very much for tuning to our channel today. In today's program, we have a special guest, Gregory Koukl, President and CEO of Stand to Reason organization. And there are many important things we can learn from him. And we discussed different topics from security of salvation to hidden ears, the so-called hidden ears of Jesus. Did Jesus visit India? Deepak Chopra's quantum consciousness, and a very popular question these days, who made God? If God made the universe, who made God? And then Christianity and science. Did Christianity do anything good, anything positive for scientific development? And how does it fare when you compare Christianity to other faiths? So it's a very, very interesting discussion, and every sentence he utters is worth listening to and reflecting. So let us join Gregory Koukl. And he says that Jesus visited India. Is there any evidence for this claim?
I have never seen any evidence for this claim. And a couple of thoughts about this claim. First of all, those years aren't missing because the historical material that we have on Jesus, which is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and that material that was written early by eyewitnesses, by people who were part, or the testimony came from eyewitnesses, people who were part of Jesus' life, simply says that he continued in subjection to his parents and grew in stature, all right, and etc. So we have a statement that covers these years, and the only thing that we get detail of is that after he was born, he goes to Egypt for 2 years for his safety, then comes back to Nazareth, and then he just grows up there. We have some detail about when he's 12 years old, when they go to Jerusalem, and there's the conversation in the temple. And from the time to his 12 to his 30, we have the same kind of thing. He's just growing up as a normal child until he is drawn, he begins his ministry with the announcement of John the Baptist. Okay, so notice that I want you to and your listeners to think about this. So Jesus is born miraculously. He's protected by God. He has a normal childhood, except for this one incident that we learn about. I must be about my Father's business. He's there in the temple. And then the rest of the time it's normal until his ministry begins, and his ministry is announced by John the Baptist. But notice what John the Baptist said. Now, he's a voice crying in the wilderness. The prophecy is in the book of Malachi about him coming. And he says, "Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world." Okay, now he's making reference to a Jewish detail of the Jewish law. Okay, and so he's saying that Jesus is fulfilling the detail of the Jewish law. So I just want you to think theologically. There's a continuity of Jesus, then being born, he's a kid, all right, but then he's in the temple, and we see theological insight that surprises even the elders there in the temple. Okay, I think it's pretty safe to assume that it is Jewish theological insight and theological insight into the Jewish scriptures, or they would have run him out of town. They're learning from him because he has insight into that religious system. And then he is announced to begin his ministry with another piece of information that is Jewish theology. Okay, now I know this other story that's circulating, and I have never ever seen any information that was reliable as historical information. There might be something I read somewhere about Esau, some guy named Esau that came and taught, all right? Well, where is the full-bodied information about this? Where are the documents, and what tests have been put to the documents to see if they have survived accurately over time in their copying and recopying, and whether they originally told accurate historical information? Now, of course, these are the questions that people ask about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all right? And they don't want to believe Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John because they bring up all of these questions. Well, how do we know it was accurate? How do we know it wasn't changed? Whatever. And we can give them good reasons why. But they don't ask the same questions about some little slip of paper that mentions a guy named Esau. But there's another problem. How is Jesus going to get from Jerusalem to India?
Yeah.
A long way to walk.
Right.
There's no airplanes, there's no cars, there's no buses, donkeys around, but he's poor. How is he going to leave his family's care? Keep in mind, children stayed with their families, and the text itself says that he grew up there. And in fact, later on when he starts his ministry, people are amazed at his insight. And they're saying, where did he get this insight? Isn't he the son of Joseph? Don't we know his brothers and his sisters? The comment indicates that he's just one of the kids that grew up in the neighborhood. We've known this kid, and all of a sudden he's a big shot, right? Okay. And you don't have somebody said, oh, no, don't you remember? He left for 15 years, and he went studied under the gurus of India. That's why he knows, oh, that's right, I forgot all that stuff. No, you didn't see any mention of that. So there is nothing in the text that gives you the implication or the indication that somehow there's this missing part of Jesus' life. He just disappears and nobody knows where he's at, and then he shows up again out of nowhere, and being heralded by a Hebrew prophet, John the Baptist, from Old Testament prophecy. This is the last point. There is nothing even remotely similar to Hinduism or any Eastern religion in anything that Jesus teaches. Nothing. He says, you read the scriptures and you will see they testify of me. John the Baptist testified of me. Moses testified of me. Okay, and then that's in John 5. And then after his resurrection, he's telling his disciples, he's explaining in the road to Emmaus, look at here from Moses and the prophets and all the scriptures taught that the Christ, the Messiah, which is a Jewish concept, had to die. So there is all the time when we see Jesus, he's always looking back to the Old Testament. He's not looking back to the Vedas. He's not talking like a guru. He's not some kind of reincarnation teacher. There is nothing similar to Eastern religion in any of his teaching. And in fact, remember, this is a Jewish boy who's growing up in a very tight Jewish neighborhood who didn't want anything at all to do with Gentiles. These are a host of reasons why the claim that Jesus showed up in India and spent a lot of time there and was kind of a guru there is completely vacuous, specious, and false. There is no evidence of it, and there's a lot of evidence against it.
Problem of evil is not a good argument against God. It is actually one of the best arguments for God.
Yes, that's right.
Evil itself is one of the best arguments for God. Please explain.
Yes. This surprises people when I say this, that the problem of evil is one of the best arguments for God, not against God. And I think it's because they haven't thought about the issue carefully. Think about the problem of evil. When people complain about the problem of evil, they're saying that things are not the way they're supposed to be. Something has gone wrong, okay? Well, something can only go wrong if there is a way that it's supposed to be right. Okay, now I want to move slowly here because this is a very important point people get. If we say that, say, a man is a criminal, it is because the man has broken a law. Okay, so he's a criminal. Really? What did he do? Well, he stole from somebody else, and that's illegal. He broke the law. Okay, I get that. Okay, but the law can only be there if somebody made the law. So if you're not in any country, you can't break the law because there's no one to break the law. Sometimes I point out, like in Germany, they have this super highway, and it's called the Autobahn. Yes, and can you break the speed limit on the Autobahn? The answer is no, you can't break the speed limit. Why not? Because there is no speed limit on the Autobahn. Okay, so you can't break a speed limit that doesn't exist. Okay, now if there is a speed limit on a freeway that you can break, it's only because there was a governing authority that gave the law that you end up breaking by going too fast. Okay, so notice how what's required for there to be a problem of evil. Just to have a problem of evil, you have to have a good law that is broken. Results in evil. But in order to have a good law that is broken, there has to be a lawmaker to make that good law. That's the way that works. The laws don't just come out of nowhere. They don't come by accident. If they came by accident, why should I believe it? There's no authority. I can't make the law. You can't make the law. Okay, because we're not an adequate authority in any area to do that. Well, I make the law at my house, but those get broken all the time. So when people complain about the problem of evil, and by the way, everybody does this because they all know that something's wrong with the world. They're complaining that a law has been broken. That's really what it amounts to. Okay. And then, and keep in mind that when they complain about evil, they are not talking about being inconvenienced or doing something that people, oh, I don't like that, well, there are a lot of things I don't like. I don't like Brussels sprouts. I don't like liver, I don't like that, but that's not evil. It's just stuff I don't like. And so there's a lot of people think, well, there's stuff that they don't like, but see, that's not. When people complain about evil, they're talking about real evil out there in the world, okay? In order for there to be real evil out there in the world, there's got to be a set of laws over everybody that defines what the evil actually is, that gets broken, and that's evil, all right? The question is, where do those laws come from? There's only one place the laws can come from. They have to come from a lawmaker that's big enough to require to make, in a certain sense, laws over the whole humanity. Okay, well, who's that? That's not Fred. That's not Bill. That's not Sasha. That's God. He's the only one. So, in order to have the problem of evil, you have to have a God. Okay. If there is no God, then there are no laws. If there are no laws, there are no broken laws. And if there are no broken laws, there's no problem of evil. But there is a problem of evil. We all know this. Therefore, there are broken laws. Therefore, there are laws. Therefore, there is a lawmaker. Therefore, there is God. Now, I understand this doesn't answer the question, how could God be good and powerful and still allow evil in the world? That's a separate question. One one thing you can't do is you can't say God doesn't exist because of evil in the world, because then you're going to have to say, and that means there is no evil in the world. But if there is no evil in the world, then what is that person complaining about to begin with? So that's called the moral argument for the existence of God. And very simply put, it's, if there is no God, then there is no objective morality. But there is objective morality. We know that because of the problem of evil. Therefore, there must be a God.
Thank you, sir. And also, I think as we go through COVID-19, and if we take naturalistic worldview, this is what we expect.
Yes.
Because in Darwinian evolution, viruses are evolving and we are evolving.
Yeah.
This is what we expect from nature. There is no evil in any of these viruses or pandemics.
Yeah, let me make a comment, though, about that so far. And that is, first of all, it is what you'd expect even in a Christian worldview, because the world is broken and this is the kind of thing that's going to happen. But in a Christian worldview, we can call this bad and broken, okay, evil, if you will. In a naturalistic worldview, you're right. This is the kind of thing you'd expect. Different things evolve and kill other things, okay? That's what you'd expect too. However, in a materialistic worldview, a naturalistic worldview, you can't call it evil. It's just, you can say I don't like it, but you can't call it actually evil. And so there is a sense which something like COVID-19 fits into both of our worldviews. However, it fits into ours better because we know that it causes evil, and evil fits our worldview. It doesn't fit a naturalistic worldview. Chomsky, the Rules for Radicals. I have his book over here. Yeah, it's in my book. Yeah.
And Lawrence Krauss, they said that Christianity launched the Dark Ages. And that is one of their complaints, that the Dark Ages came when Christians took over the power from the Roman rulers. When the Constantine became a Christian emperor, then started the real Dark Ages for the Western civilization. And how do you answer that critique?
Well, this is not. I'm not a student of the classics or a subsequent period of time. It sounds to me like this is. People say all kinds of things about Constantine and about the Dark Ages and about the Crusades. And that's because I've been spending too much time on the internet and not looking in real history books, okay? Constantine did not make the world Christian. Up until the time of Constantine, Christianity was illegal. And therefore, if you are Christian, you are persecuted. And not much before within, I mean, I'm trying to think of the emperors that led up to Constantine, but they all persecuted the Christians. And just prior to Constantine, Christians were still being killed. All Constantine did was make Christianity legal. He didn't make it the religion of the realm. He made it legal. Now, he became a Christian himself, apparently, of some sort, but that doesn't mean that he forced other people to be Christians and then politicized the whole thing. That was 325 the early 4th century. The so-called Dark Ages didn't start for hundreds of years after that. Okay, and the Dark Ages weren't as dark as a lot of people thought. When you look at them, what made them dark, and then what brought the so-called light back again? You know, the barbarian hordes destroyed a lot. But it's interesting. There's a book called How the Irish Saved Civilization, and I can't remember the name of the author, but the whole point of the book was that it turns out historically it was Christians that saved all classic works of literature. Muslims did too in their libraries, but Christians did in the West. And they saved all these wonderful things. The Muslims didn't come up till the end of the first millennium. So, but before that, Christians saved the works to keep civilization alive. And this idea about what Constantine did and Dark Ages and all of that, most people have their information just wrong about the history. Okay, was it primitive? Was it a feudal society? Yeah, that was. By looking back nowadays with our views about democracy and freedom and republics and all of that, sure, we're much more enlightened now. But it's easy to read our enlightenment into the past and say, boy, look they were really bad. And we're this kind of like what C.S. Lewis called a historical snobbery. And
chronological snobbery.
Pardon me?
I think chronological snobbery.
That's it. There you go. Thank you for that correction. Chronological snobbery. But when you see the gospel going forth, you see things being transformed. All right. It was Christians, who were responsible for the entire world being literate. A lot of people don't know this, but Christianity made the world literate. How did it do that? Because missionaries went at great threat to themselves to spread the gospel. This is long before travel was safe and these other countries were safe, and many of them died right away. But when they went to spread the gospel, they spread the gospel with the word of God, and the word of God doesn't work in a community very well in a community where there are no words, no written words. And so they had to teach people how to read and how to write, and they had to teach them how to take their language and put it in writing, and then they could understand the Bible. And this is what made the world literate. If you think back even 150 or 200 years ago in the United States, the school books that people used to teach the kids reading all were spiritual books, and with a goal to help read the Bible. So the influence of Christianity, this is the title of one of the books behind me there. It's called Under the Influence. Under the Influence. And it explains how the influence of Christianity civilized the world.
I completely agree with that. I mean, in the first 110 colleges and universities established in the United States, 100 were started by Christian missions.
That's right. They were meant to teach theology and train pastors. And of course, they weren't just training them in theology. They were training them in the classics, in Latin and in Greek and in physics and in calculus and geometry and all of these different things. And so you're right. The just about all of the first 100, all of the Ivy League schools certainly were founded with that purpose. And so there's another example of Christianity making the world literate and bringing great changes to the world that other religious views just weren't going to bring.
Yes, even during this COVID-19 fight, if you look at these medical centers like in New York City, New York Presbyterian, New York Methodist,
that's right.
All these medical centers were established by Christians.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a very good point.
I can also make a personal connection. My dad, when he became a Christian, he started a school in India.
Interesting.
Yes, like thousands of people, Hindus, Muslims, and Christians, they got their education in this school my dad established, and he did that because of his Christian faith.
Right. Well, good for you. Good for you. Good for your dad.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes. How does atheism address this pandemic?
How does atheism?
How does atheism describe this situation as we go through?
Well, Okay, let me see if I don't answer it, you can clarify for me. But um, atheism generally deals with people who are atheists. Generally deal with this thing in a contradictory manner. Okay, now this isn't true of all atheists, and some are more careful. But most atheists are holding on to a view of reality that appeals to them, atheism, but they are also in the real world, and the real world is the world that God made, and they are made in the image of God. So there's things conflicting here. There's their false philosophy, and then there's what the world is really like. And so you're going to get two different things from atheists. On the one hand, you're going to hear, well, like Richard Dawkins says, this is just some people get lucky, some people don't. There's no evil, there's no good, there's just a blind, pitiless indifference. That's it. That's the natural world. Okay, that's consistent with atheism. All right. However, there's going to be more that in unguarded moments that they're going to say. They're going to say, this is awful, this is evil, and how could God allow all this evil in the world? Well, wait a minute, if you're an atheist, you can't call that evil, because that's not part of your category. Unless you're just saying, well, I was evolved to call that evil. But they don't say that. They don't say, boy, that's really evil. And by the way, I know that I was just evolved to say that, and it means something, so don't pay any attention to it. They don't say that. In their unguarded moments, they think these things are really evil because of the destruction it does to valuable human beings. Okay? And if human beings aren't valuable, then destroying them is no big deal. COVID destroys us, we destroy it if we can. It's just one of those things. It's just the battle of nature, battle for survival. So, this is where I think atheists show their hand. They reveal that in unguarded moments, they don't actually really believe what they say they believe. They actually believe the real world that God made.